The Heavenly Demon. Can't Live a Normal Life. By Sanchin. Chapter 241. Deadly Kill. Part 1. The passionate festival had ended, so Roman Dmitri and his party immediately packed their things. Since they had no other reason to stay in Valhalla, they thought of using the warp gate and heading to Adelian. But when they arrived at the warp gate, the person in charge responded that it wouldn't work. "I am sorry, but it seems that it will be difficult to use the warp gate for the time being. We are trying to solve the problem of the gate quickly, but according to our mage in the tower, it would take 15 days at a minimum to get it done. How about staying in Marin for the time being? Traveling on foot will take a long time, so we will contact our superiors and provide a new place for Mr. Roman Dmitri to stay in." A polite smile in nature. The person in charge showed the right attitude, but Roman Dmitri knew the truth behind it. "The warp gate is blocked as I expected. A day ago, the head of the Valhalla Information Guild informed Roman Dmitri about the changes in Marin that happened overnight. The order to close the warp gate has been issued by the Imperial Court of Valhalla. On the surface, they might say it isn't working, but in reality, there is nothing wrong. I am sure that you will hear the same response regarding the warp gate in any city you step into. They want the Lord to move on foot." From Marin to Dmitri, it was quite a distance. Even if they moved on horses, it was a distance they could not handle in 1 or 2 months, so the warp gate was essential for them to return to Dmitri. Eventually, with time passing, Valhalla would have no choice but to open the warp gate. However, the problem was that it would take a considerable amount of time until then, and Valhalla's plan was unpredictable. "There is just one way. It's when we will arrive at the trading city of Valhalla, a month away from Marin. A city that excels in trade will have hundreds of warps happening every day, and it can cause a huge loss to the Empire if they choose to close it even for 1 day, so the Empire cannot hold us back for long. They will think the same as us. From Marin to the trade city. It is certain that it would work out within that 1 month." Valhalla was a rotten nation. The idea that he might protect his honor as a warrior made them send a clear message by closing the warp gate. He had already expected it, so Roman Dmitri took a different turn. Conversely, if the chances were limited, he would actively respond to their plans. A few days later, Marquis Belfer received a report. "Roman Dmitri, who has left Marin, is heading for the trading city. It is as we had expected. Rather than being in Valhalla, he seemed to have decided that it was safer to move through the trading city. He is so quick-witted. So, when is the right time to attack?" "That. Actually, something went wrong. They received information from their informants." The subordinate spoke with a puzzled face. "As you know, Roman Dmitri immediately gained immense fame from the festival here. With the people of Valhalla praising him, Roman Dmitri is deliberately making the people follow his path. So right now, there are many eyes and ears around him. Knowing that Roman Dmitri will leave Valhalla soon and will never be seen again, the people of Valhalla are going to visit him until he reaches the trading city." It started with a rumor. When they heard that they would receive the blessings of Valhalla if they welcomed Roman Dmitri, the people willingly walked with him. The fight between Roman Dmitri and Barbassa. What happened that day left a huge impact on people's opinions of him. People remembered that Roman Dmitri raised his honor as a warrior even though he was poisoned, and the emotions that spread like a viral fever formed a considerable crowd. It was a very difficult situation to attack him openly. And if they attacked him now, the people would notice it. When he first stepped into their nation, Roman Dmitri was just a stranger in their land. However, he, who was treated with discrimination by the people, has now become a hero of Valhalla whom everyone has recognized. If we attack Roman Dmitri now, the civilians would become casualties. Please give us an order. If needed, we can break apart the people who are walking with Roman Dmitri through an order, but after that, suspicion will rise if Roman Dmitri gets into danger. Roman Dmitri is no longer a normal person. People consider him the symbol of a warrior. Marquis Belfer calmly looked out the window. Valhalla was a deformed country. The nobles led most of the work, but a powerful person like Viscount Jonathan died in vain because of the Valhalla Emperor's anger. And committing treason would be unimaginable. The top rankers who represented Valhalla and even Barbossa couldn't surpass them, so they all showed blind loyalty towards the Valhalla Emperor. The reason for this loyalty is unknown. As they followed the Valhalla Emperor, who had no power, the 14th son rose to the position of emperor. So on this day, they were ready to risk their lives. If they let Roman Dmitri survive, they weren't sure what kind of punishment would come. And Marquis Belfer said, "There is no need to worry too much about the presence of the people. When attacking Roman Dmitri, our job is not to step in and take matters into our own hands. It is the death of a guest whom we had invited to Valhalla's lands. If it is discovered that it is Valhalla's plan, it will cause a stir. In the first place, the subject of this plan wouldn't be Valhalla. Valhalla would only participate, but there was a separate being who actually wanted to do the task. We will pass on the information and close our eyes. Even if Roman Dmitri dies. As long as we show a reasonable nature and make minimal effort to avoid being held responsible for what happened, we can kill him. So tell Kronos that whatever they do, we will not hold them accountable." It was a cold voice. Marquis Belfer had no doubt that the plan would work. The attack began without any warning. In response to the killing intent that he had noticed, Roman Dmitri drew his sword as if he had been waiting. "It is the enemies. Everyone, move." Yes. It was a sudden change in the situation, and the people of Valhalla looked confused. They marched after Roman Dmitri, who fought as a guest and stood on the stage of their festival. The people withdrew to a safe distance, and their eyes widened. The expression on their faces seemed to be wanting to check to see what was happening. And at that moment, Papit! A dagger was thrown from a bush. And even though it was broad daylight, beings with black clothes on their faces popped out at the same time and raised their aura. GRRNG. They were the shadows. The Kronos Empire didn't hide their intentions. Even if they get condemned by the international community for their actions on the land of Valhalla, they wanted to declare their intent to kill Roman Dmitri. The shadows quickly flooded the whole area. As the soldiers in front moved with their daggers, they menacingly extended their daggers, which shimmered with a black aura. Whack! Kong! The attack was blocked. It was Chris. He blocked the attack at the front and swung his sword before the shadow could even react. Now, with just one flashing move, dark red blood spilled from the shadow's body. The body that was wrapped in darkness tried to deflect the attack and began to scatter into the shadows, but with Chris's keen senses, he cut off the link of mana to his body at once. During the time they had to prepare for Valhalla, Roman Dmitri's subordinates didn't just train together. Roman Dmitri knew that if Kronos sought his life, then they would use the shadows. "From now on, you guys will train on how to deal with the shadows." It was extreme training, and it was a time they had to spill blood. And during the training, where every moment was a crisis, Chris was able to capture a flow of mana he hadn't seen before. Through the small gaps, Chris stepped forward. And he wasn't just able to cut down the first shadow that rushed in. The bodies of the shadows attacking from all directions were slaughtered. People who watched the situation from afar were shocked. The rumors about the shadows were great. It was well known that they couldn't be dealt with by normal people, but Chris was able to respond to them perfectly. That was just the start. Roman Dmitri said, "Take down all the enemies." At those orders, from behind Chris, two tall men jumped up. Among the subordinates following Roman Dmitri, who would take on the role of the vanguard? Chris? No. He was by far the best player except for Roman Dmitri, but he was not going to stay at the forefront of the battlefield. If there was a flaw, the others were there to cover it and support him. And Roman Dmitri wanted Chris to grow into someone like a commander who could take on his role and not just his sword. Then Kevin? Not him. He was the sharpest swordsman whom Roman trusted, but there were more suitable ones to be at the forefront. And they were Crush, Vulcan and Pookie. Exposing their barbaric muscles, they swung their great swords and immediately turned the bodies of the shadows into chunks of meat. An eerie cracking sound could be heard. It was the sound of human flesh being torn like paper at Roman Dimitri's small command, and they both pierced through the shadows. Grrrng. Attacks came from all directions. Some shadows moved with the help of the other shadows being caught, and some attacked through the gaps, aiming for the blind spots. Pack. Vulcan dodged the attack through a narrow gap and cut down the shadow in front of him with a red aura. Crack. At the same time, Vulcan turned to the side and allowed the opponent to attack, and the shadow had no choice but to face Pookie, who was behind him. And as if he had already expected Vulcan to do that, Pookie had already swung his sword, and even before the shadow could respond, the body of the shadow was torn apart. Whack! Blood splattered. Pookie rushed ahead like a dog, not caring about being isolated. As he dealt with the attacks of the enemies, Vulcan intervened at the right time to give Pookie time to catch his breath. Then it was a similar situation as earlier. Just as Vulcan trusted Pookie's existence and allowed the shadows to pass through, Pookie was aware of Vulcan's existence and took over. During the battles in the past, Vulcan and Pookie always moved together. At first, they sought Dimitri for different reasons, but through their similar backgrounds as mercenaries, they immediately got close. They even had a similar nature. The two of them wanted to fight at the forefront, and while experiencing the battles together, they began to develop in a way that both made up for what the other lacked. The place was full of enemies, and in there, Vulcan and Pookie showed an overwhelming presence. Roman Dimitri's men developed according to their new roles and served as vanguards. It was a melee battle, and during the fight, Roman Dimitri's forces didn't move back even an inch. They prepared for the existence of the shadows in advance, but their victories were what gave them confidence. Behind them was Roman Dimitri, and that one fact alone made them risk their lives without the slightest doubt of their victory. Quack. Quang. When the soldiers opened the way, Roman Dimitri sorted things out. The existence of the shadows that he had already experienced once was not a threat to Roman Dimitri. Could it be because it was dark? With their noticeably dwindling numbers, the shadows suddenly ebbed away. And at that moment, one shadow smiled and said, "Do not think that this is over." In those words, the intention of Kronos was revealed. They also had experience dealing with Roman Dimitri. They couldn't subdue Roman Dimitri when he was alone, but they wouldn't have thought that he would manage to take down their assassins with this much power. So why did they show up and attack, then? It was just to show their dedication to destroying him. They found out that Roman Dimitri was heading for the trade city and openly declared war on him. They would surely die, so they had no choice but to let him live now, as they would sort out the situation later. Leaving behind the muttering people in the distance, a man in a robe pulled his hood down as he approached Roman Dimitri. Video? Saved. It was Robin. He was Valhalla's intelligence chief. From the time they left Marin, he ordered the use of a magic image storage through the person in charge of Valhalla, and it contained the series of events that occurred. Roman Dimitri said, "From now on, spread the video to the people of Valhalla, so that all of them know what is happening here." I understand. A fight was unavoidable. So from now on, he thought of raising the scale of it. Chapter 242. Deadly Kill. Part 2. At first, the news that Roman Dimitri had been attacked spread like a rumor. Does that make sense? This is Valhalla. What insane bastard would attack Roman Dimitri in the territory of our empire? It is clearly a misunderstanding. I heard that people are following Roman Dimitri, so there must have been trouble regarding that. In the empire, who would dare touch the warrior whom Valhalla respected? People from the same Valhalla wouldn't do such a thing, and if they had to, it would be the work of another nation. It made no sense, even if it was the Kronos Empire. It was practically impossible to move their troops to kill someone in the territory of Valhalla. How would they cross the border? Valhalla wouldn't just stand by. However, the rumors flared up. The people who watched it happen presented clear evidence by showing videos along with specific testimonies. The ones who attacked Roman Dmitri must be those shadows of the Kronos Empire. Fucking retards. After announcing their intent to assassinate Roman Dmitri, they now step into the lands of Valhalla and try to kill him. Everyone, watch this. Inside, the events of that time have been clearly recorded. The way to check the video required a magic tool, so many people couldn't check it directly. However, what happened to Roman Dmitri quickly began to spread through the mouths of those who had confirmed the video. The video showed the reality as it was. A procession followed Roman Dmitri, and when assassins suddenly attacked him, Roman Dmitri raised his voice and made the people evacuate. Seeing that happen, the people were amazed. In a situation where he was being attacked, it was touching to see him prioritize the lives of the people of Valhalla. And, of course, it was what Roman Dmitri intended. The reason he allowed the people to walk with him and save their lives was so he could use them as witnesses by pushing them a little far away from the battlefield and recording what had happened in a video. It was obvious that Valhalla wouldn't directly reveal their intent to kill him. If they attacked Roman Dmitri, who was at the festival, the foundation of the nation would collapse, so their only option was to stand on the sidelines. That was to say that what Valhalla didn't want was to spread the blame for the series of events onto them. There was an uproar. The people expressed their anger at the attack on Roman Dmitri, and it seemed like they wanted war, saying that Kronos clearly disregarded Valhalla. Everyone raised their voices to help Roman Dmitri. It would be a different thing if the truth hadn't been revealed. If Roman Dmitri was now being threatened by Kronos, they had to help him return safely. The people said, "Roman Dmitri is the person who showed us what the pride of Valhalla is. If such a person is killed by the Empire while he is still in Valhalla, we can never talk about the pride of our nation. People of Valhalla, let us rise. We need to lend our strength so that Roman Dmitri can return safely." The number of people began to grow, and all their eyes turned to the imperial family. And in response to those who urged them to help, Valhalla had to express their intention to move their troops naturally. But a day passed. And then 2 days. A week passed. The Valhalla imperial family did not send any troops to Roman Dmitri. The Valhalla imperial family. They never went against the trend. While angered by the actions of the Kronos Empire, they created an unavoidable reason not to help Roman Dmitri. The shadows of the Kronos Empire are attacking key figures in Valhalla other than Roman Dmitri. Apparently, by drawing attention by attacking Roman Dmitri, it is clear that they have other purposes. People of Valhalla, do not cause havoc now. They have shown hostility towards our empire, and the imperial family will not allow them to have even a single victory. That was the position of the imperial family in Valhalla, and there was not a single truth to it. There wasn't any truth to the statement that a key figure in Valhalla had been attacked, but that was enough to prevent more questions. There were people who claimed to have witnessed shadows in other regions of Valhalla too. It was a ploy to divert attention away from Roman Dmitri and the right justification for them not to send troops. So if Roman Dmitri died, they could escape being held responsible. But rather than openly saying that, they chose a way to calm down people's anger through false rumors. Valhalla was clever. Contrary to what people called the nation of warriors, they knew how to use rumors to their advantage. Actually, if the Kronos Empire invaded Valhalla's territory, it would have led to a direct war. However, Valhalla allowed it, and they later intended to finish it by asking Kronos to take full responsibility. It was a well-made plan. It was a deliberate move. While expressing their anger at not being able to help, Roman would get further attacked. On the first day, the shadows attacked openly. And from the second day on, they attempted to attack from a distance at night, and whenever Roman's troops rested, they would come. It was a warning for them never to rest. And if there were a well in the vicinity that they could use to drink water, the shadows would poison it and block it from being used. Their intentions were made clear at that moment. They didn't want to kill Roman Dmitri right away. They wanted to use the permission that Valhalla had given them and take advantage of the 1 month's time. On the 10th day, Valhalla gradually sent troops to prove they were helping Roman. Well, they had no choice but to. However, they used the reason that the warp gate was closed as an excuse for Roman Dmitri, and the situation was becoming more violent. Everyone's eyes were on Roman Dmitri. The people of Valhalla paid attention to Roman Dmitri's actions to the extent that they couldn't concentrate on their daily lives. And during that time, there were some people who found Roman Dmitri. They weren't the people of the royal family, but the group behind Sanchez. The guards of Valhalla and Kronos' attack, Sanchez was furious. After hearing about it from Morales, he went to the people who followed his teacher and raised his voice. "We need to help Roman Dmitri. If teacher were alive, he wouldn't have watched Roman Dmitri die in Valhalla after defeating Barbossa. The Valhalla imperial family is being absurd. In the end, instead of trusting and waiting for them, let us show the pride of Valhalla." Valhalla was a country of romance. Even though it had been tainted by reality and changed, the people who followed Morales had a flame burning within them. They formed an army. It took them some time to form a group, starting on the eve, and hundreds of troops followed Sanchez to find Roman Dmitri. Their strength wasn't something that could be evaluated with just numbers. The people under Morales were mostly beast men or those skilled in combat to the extent that they had lived on the battlefield all their lives. By the time the sun went down, Sanchez said, looking at Roman Dmitri, "Roman Dmitri, we will help you from now on." They were sincere words. Sanchez put his life on the line. Through this incident, he was going to go against the strong, but after following Morales, he wasn't concerned with power and position. He was born a warrior. Rather than wealth and fame, he wanted a righteous death. However, Roman's reaction was not what he had expected. "I will thank you for the thought of helping me. But do not have false hope that you can do something. The Kronos Empire had expected patriots like you to step in right from the start. What I mean is, your decisions will drive you and the others to your deaths. It is fine. If we had wanted to live, we wouldn't have come all this way." Idiots. Sanchez and their warriors. They weren't looking for profits. Despite Roman's warning, they showed their stubbornness. But Roman Dmitri knew that they didn't have much influence. It is already too late to make a choice. Still, the fact that you took this risk on your own is fortunate. It was already too late to say that. He made clear sense. The moment Roman drew his sword, lightning fell from the sky, which threw the darkness aside. Flash. It brightened the land. Even though the darkness had been pushed back, the bushes around still seemed to be stained in darkness. Hundreds, no, there were more shadows than that, and they all showed their murderous intent. It was different than the first day. At the same time, the shadows rushed forward, and powerful dark mana rose behind them. Dark lightning. Grrrng. Quack quack wang. The sky shone brightly. The dark lightning struck, and the beings who were under it got taken down at once. They were a branch of the shadows, the demons of the abyss. Since they were using magic now, Roman Dmitri's men had to move in perfect order. "It is the enemy. Take a defensive stance." The moment the lightning struck, Roman Dmitri's soldiers formed a magic defense. Ever since the Phoenix Magic Tower joined them, they had been training against mages. The moment Roman Dmitri was aware of the enemy's presence, he told his men to prepare for the attack, and Roman's men didn't even think for a second and acted right then. It was then that the shadows rushed in from all sides and attacked at once. Kong. Kakang. The battle began. The shadows attacked the soldiers, and they pressed 3 or 4 people at a time. It was a shocking sight. When 2 shadows blocked a soldier's movement, another one would use him as a stepping stone and move forward. Over their heads, another shadow fell. The shadow that was enveloped in darkness gained momentum and cut off the breath of a soldier with a dagger at once. Even if they knew how to attack them, the shadows were not easy opponents. In addition, there weren't just 1 or 2 mages that were constantly using magic spells from behind the shadows. Dark flame. Weak. Weak. a fire broke out. The demon's magic tore down the soldiers, penetrated through the gaps, and slashed the surroundings. After 10 days of preparation, Roman Dimitri's soldiers didn't seem to be affected much, but their stamina must have been draining. And when the situation was reaching its climax, the shadows, regardless of the presence of Sanchez and his men, decided that this was the time to attack. Despite that, Roman Dimitri's soldiers were not weak. They formed a group of 3 and appeared to compensate for each other's weaknesses as if they had been perfectly trained for them. They responded so orderly, without panicking. However, even though the attacks of the shadows were absurd, the experience Roman had given his men was better. But Sanchez and the others panicked. Unlike those who were experienced in going against the shadows, they had no such thing. Slash. The body moved like air, and Sanchez was taken aback. He hurriedly retrieved his sword to block the attack, but the other warriors died in vain. Quack. Quack. It was a one-sided slaughter compared to Roman Dimitri's soldiers, and only then did they realize that they couldn't have a false hope that they could do anything here. Roman wasn't giving them a wake-up call. He just meant that they couldn't do much. How? Sanchez's eyes widened. He couldn't see the soldiers fighting against the shadows. He stood at the crossroads of life and death, unable to handle a single shadow, but when he saw them not retreating, he was shocked. What kind of life did Roman and his soldiers live to act like this? In Valhalla, even against the demons of Kronos, they didn't show any signs of getting pushed around. But the situation wasn't good. The problem was those black mages. Even the magic formation for defense couldn't block their attacks. It was then. Stay in formation. It was Roman Dimitri. He moved. The shadows rushed and tried to stop him, but the aura around him violently tore them apart. Even if they attacked in groups, the abilities of the shadows didn't seem to work. Their bodies, which were about to scatter in the shadows, turned pale, and they coughed up blood as their mana link was severed. At that moment, the eyes of the black mages focused. Appearing from the darkness, they almost reached them, and simultaneous magic spells were aimed at Roman Dimitri. However, they didn't know that Felix and the mages went against Roman Dimitri. And as they laid on the ground, they acknowledged how great Roman was. I can assure you, our Lord is the natural enemy of mages. RRNG. GRRNGGG. Magic rose from the side, and Roman Dimitri rushed towards the whirlpool of magic. Chapter 243. Deadly Kill. Part 3. Flash. The world brightened. And during the short time that the lightning spread, Roman Dimitri could be seen charging at the black mages. Hold. Entangle. Weak. Swish. The black mages unleashed their black magic. A force of suppression instantly caught Roman Dimitri's movement, and the ground below him began to spew out dead tree trunks that grew huge and tried to wrap themselves around him. It wasn't just that. While some of them held down Roman Dimitri, the others used their magic to manifest attacks. Dark lightning. Dark flame. GRRNG. Weak. Weak. Magic and sword aura. People usually say that aura swordsmen have the advantage in sparring where the two people are of the same level, but in a many versus one match, the synergy of a mage increases. It wasn't simply a result of 1 + 1 is equal to 2, but a synergy. That produced a result of 1 + 1 is equal to 4. In front of their eyes, hell unfolded. It was clear that the momentary suppression caused by the hold would slow down Roman Dimitri. However, pat. 0.1 second. Roman Dimitri immediately released the aura of suppression that struck his body and used the tree trunks that were rushing at him like monster tentacles instead. It was a shocking situation for the black mages. He was able to destroy hold so easily, and then a series of magic attacks all fell to the ground. Quan. Rumble. At that moment, Roman Dimitri broke through the blast and dug into the space. Even before one of the mages could react, his lightning-fast sword blew the mage's head off. Flash. Stop it. Dark arrow. Papaback. Magic exploded in all directions. The magic of the black mages that attacked Roman Dmitri made an unpleasant sound that was similar to that of a demon. Dark arrows began to shower in from all sides, and dark flames rose through the surroundings, blocking them from retreating. Moreover, they tried the power of suppression again. In a direct confrontation, it was practically impossible for just one or a swordsman to deal with so many mages. It was the realm of common sense. However, Roman Dmitri broke through the boundary. After grasping the principles of magic, no mana that could pierce through his body could survive for even a second. At the same time, he moved boldly. Since there was no escape route, he pierced through the space engulfed with flames while protecting his body by raising his mana. Weak. Roar. His body was caught on fire. The fire was only on the surface since his body was protected by aura, and Roman Dmitri's gaze was fixed on the mages. Blink. Flash. The black mages were gone. They were now at a distance of 10 meters. Then they fled to a distance of around 50 meters at once. The black mages thought that they had secured a safe distance from Roman Dmitri, but as soon as their vision returned to normal, they saw someone right in front of their eyes. Roman Dmitri perfectly followed their movements. In a situation where normal beings couldn't grasp the flow of mana, Roman Dmitri saw exactly where their bodies were moving. Felix and the mages of the magic tower were not weak beings. Just like the black mages, they had their own roles, and they took advantage of their magic, but Roman's ability didn't allow any loopholes. If they restricted his movements, he would break them all down. Magic spells that could move through space were meaningless since Roman knew where they would move. So they said that, without a doubt, Roman Dmitri was the true enemy of the mages. Despite seeing it with their own eyes and experiencing it themselves, they couldn't understand how he destroyed their magic so quickly. And it was the same this time too. Flash. He slashed down a black mage. Even though his body parts hadn't fully formed after the teleportation, some exposed parts were torn down at once. It was a shocking sight. And it was at the moment when Roman Dmitri was about to pounce on another prey. Quang. Rumble. A huge flame rose and attacked Roman Dmitri. It was truly a shocking power for a flame to have. Then the mage who used the high-level magic showed their presence from a distant location. Roman Dmitri. This is where the mess you created ends. Weak. Flicker. Dark flames swirled around him. The magic he was using was a six-circle magic. It was impossible to block it completely, and it showed tremendous attack power to spread over his body and burn him in an instant. The black mage casted magic. He looked around in the darkness and instantly confirmed that he could sense a presence within his flame, and that didn't make sense. The dark flames were powerful enough to burn everything down. Even if Roman Dmitri was the monster that defeated Barbassa, he didn't get the chance to avoid the spell, so surviving inside it was impossible. However, the reality in front of him didn't make sense. A being that slowly stepped out of the flames appeared, engulfed in the flames of darkness. Weak. Weak. The six-circle fire attack should have burned his body. Roman Dmitri could have dodged the attack, but he deliberately didn't do that. Kronos Empire. How arrogant you must be. It wasn't enough that you invaded the Valhalla Empire's lands. Now you even reveal the existence of your black mages. Without another thought. Are you certain of your victory, or are you that sure that there would be no problem that would arise from this? Well, whatever it is, your decision has been wrong. The reason why the mages of Phoenix were defeated wasn't because of Roman's ability to destroy their magic. In the first place, in terms of attributes, Roman Dmitri possessed powers that the mages couldn't understand. The flames of the flame demon. The powerful force that resided within his body endowed him with an overwhelming affinity for fire. Roman Dmitri, who was already strong and untouchable in the face of fire, was reborn as an existence impervious to the flame of the six-circle magic as he accepted the flame. That was to say that they were the perfect nemesis. It wasn't to the extent that each of their strengths and weaknesses felt right together, but Roman Dmitri was like a castle that couldn't be broken into. If you want to live, fight until the end. Swish. He kicked the ground, and the magic of the black mages exploded. Roman Dmitri confirmed that he could handle the flames, yet he had this thought in the back of his mind that a human body could not endure it until the end. Perfect immunity didn't exist. In the end, the magic used by the black mages was just weak, and if they used more magic, the situation would be inevitably different. Then the other mages helped. It was a battle of strength and power. Seeing Roman Dmitri attack from the front, the black mages terrifyingly increased their attacks. Firestorm. Weak. Roar. A seven-circle magic. It was another strong flame attack. The magic that was raging from the mage showed how much he wanted Roman Dmitri to die this time. Quang. Rumble. The flames raged. It was a sight that even Roman Dmitri's men who were fighting got stunned at, and all the surrounding bushes were burned black. The Emperor of Kronos summoned the demons of the abyss. They were beings that used black mana. And with Roman Dmitri not being protected by Valhalla, they were sure that the man would never be able to stop their attacks. In addition, there were numerous shadows and black mages. This wasn't just an assassination. It had enough power to destroy a small nation. And if this were a battlefield, the firestorm would have wiped out thousands of troops. It was an overwhelming force, but it couldn't defeat a single person, Roman Dmitri. Swish. The flames raged. Even as the surroundings burned and the ground collapsed, Roman Dmitri continued to move through the flames. The seven-circle flames couldn't pierce his aura. Roman Dmitri's resistance also affected his aura and showed great power, at least against the flames. As the other black mages were desperate, they used more magic. They tried their best to stop Roman Dmitri, but at some point, he appeared right in front of them. And then... flash. The moment he looked at him, the black mage's body was cut, with red blood spilling out. The death of their leader changed things. As soon as Roman Dmitri killed their leader, the shadows quickly fled, even without a signal being given. It was a strange sight. The number of the shadows was overwhelming, but they judged that they had no more chance of winning this. However, Roman Dmitri chased after them. He followed them to cut off their breath. Swish. Slash. The shadows turned around to counterattack, and the last counterattack was for them to somehow try to escape, but that ended in failure, and their bodies were cut off with a dagger. It was an instant massacre. When Roman Dmitri slaughtered the shadows couldn't do anything to resist and felt helpless. The situation changed, and the assassins were being driven to death. Valhalla and Kronos. They were sure that he couldn't survive the overt assassination, but the results that were so immediate felt shocking. Kronos was an obvious enemy. Roman Dmitri didn't take matters into his own hands, nor did he offer them the option to surrender. He was just showing what would happen to those beings who were hostile to him. Either they would kill him, or he would kill them. The moment the assassins showed their intent to kill, the human mercy that people expected was thrown out the window. Just like when he killed Barco. In this fight, not just Valhalla but the whole continent was watching, and Roman Dmitri proved what Dmitri was in a ridiculously unreasonable fight. This was the last time. At the sight of the last shadow he could see, he cut off both of his arms without stopping his breath. Pat. The balance of the shadow fell, and the shadow, whose arms had been cut off, showed how miserable he was as he slammed to the ground. At that moment. Clench. He trampled on his head. Suppressing the shadow so he couldn't raise his head, Roman Dmitri let out a cold voice. Tell your emperor this. Dmitri is far from here. If he wants to kill me, now is his chance. Because Roman had lived the life of a predator, he knew Kronos' thoughts. He would never, despite a shocking defeat, forget his murderous intentions against him. The situation was sorted out. Chris approached and reported the situation. Since we prepared in advance, the damage on our side wasn't that big, but almost half the warriors of Valhalla died. Still, thanks to their help, the damage we would have received was reduced. If they hadn't helped us, we would have taken more damage. The warriors of Valhalla were brave. Even knowing that their attacks wouldn't work against the shadows, they fought until the end as they shouted for Valhalla. Being born into a battle-loving nation, they thought that they should risk their lives to send Roman Dmitri back to his home. In addition, because of their reckless nature, they had no choice but to suffer a lot of damage. However, Sanchez and his warriors did not despair. What was more important than the fact that half of them died was the victory that came at the cost of half of their sacrifice. Roman Dmitri said, "Recover the bodies. We will conduct a simple cremation for the dead and then move to the trading city." "I understand. But there is something the Lord needs to confirm." Chris's words gave off a strange vibe. Rather than being joyful about their victory, he showed concern about something. So Roman moved. At the place where Chris guided him, the person who seemed to be the head of the Black Mages was there with a pale face. However, a familiar face. Suddenly, memories flooded his mind. Felix had spoken about it before. In order to master burning, one needs a strong affinity with the flame attribute. Usually, there are special occasions for gaining an affinity for fire. And my teacher said that he acquired an affinity for fire after suffering a terrible accident when he was young. As proof, half of his face was covered with burns. If one is searching for our missing teacher, they could identify him through those marks. It was only mentioned once, yet he remembered it. The corpse of the Black Mage, exactly half of his face was covered in burn marks. He was sure of it. The identity of the Black Mage was that of the former master of the Phoenix Magic Tower, who had disappeared.